if you watch the news, you're misinformed, or if you don't watch it, you're uninformed. So it's like sometimes television's is all they have, and people form an opinion on just
Yeah.
certain things, because sometimes what people will do, whether it's press or advertising and stuff like that, they'll show something that's not a true reflection of the world we live in, or where those people come from. So
Yeah.
it's like, and you know, and I think sometimes that's a struggle. I mean, fortunately for me, I like, I hear when I hear people's stories and stuff, is sometimes I'm a bit surprised, because I think to myself, well, why hasn't that happened to me? But it's probably happened to people differently, because some things that are said or done, or some things that are even not said, are done in different ways. Sometimes you can say a lot
Yeah.
by not saying anything, you know.
Yeah.
So, but bringing it back to sort of like kind of well-being, which is kind of the next thing we wanted to touch on, is you know um how that shapes us, you know as men, or how we
Yeah.
or what, or whatever, what even the word well-being means. Because when I look at my wife's case, she's come back home sometimes, she's like, that's it, I want to live, I want to move away from this area. I don't want to continue my career working in this sort of area or that sort of area, because of people's perceptions of me. So that's a little bit of like mental health and how you do it. What's class as good mental health. And I know in
Yeah.
my workplace they have things like well-being week, and they try as much as possible to make people feel good. So you
Yeah.
might have yoga sessions, or you might have sort of all of these are virtual, by the way, obviously.
Yeah.
What do they call, there's one where they call it mindfulness sessions,
Yeah.
where it's sort of like meditating and stuff like that. And to be honest, I don't really partake in some of those things, because I just think they're not for me. But I just want kind of interested to hear what you think of them. Somebody that might kind of has a similar, or works in that sort of similar area. What do you see any real benefits for that, or do you feel like more it's just something that people have to do?
Um, I see a lot of benefit, and I will always support. Like, I think the company I've just formed recently will be providing HR services, but part of it is going to be well-being, and assisting organizations in setting proper well-being policies and well-being support programs for the organizations. And why I find those are, for me, I find them to be important is that sometimes we really don't know we're in trouble. You really don't know you're going through, or you're either depressed or slightly challenged, whatever the case might be. And it just takes one of these sessions to open that up for you. So
Mm,
you might not find, for example, yoga working for you, but let's talk through what's happened now in COVID, right? You are a manager of staff and you are constantly at the office, sitting by your desk, watching over these guys, right? And that's how you manage. You manage by watching over these individuals. You
mm,
are then thrown into a situation now of lockdown and you're totally away from them, right? Your management style has to change. You're going crazy because you can't see your people, but they need to deliver. You
mm,
don't know what they're doing. And that's how you keep yourself calm. So now, line managers, for example, I found were really struggling with that and getting a bit too, starting to micromanage even more and more, which started to frustrate. They didn't know how to deal with being away from their teams.
mm,
And the way to deal it was to now be more and more pressure, more meetings, more this, which resulted in less productivity. So
mm,
where I find these wellness programs happen is, like you said, one was given us mindfulness. I might put something in there to say how to manage remotely, you know, and
mm,
then give you a tool set to help you. So you can understand that, guy, you don't have to always be watching over. Maybe set one catch up every third day, set deliverable, something that someone delivers and sends you an email at the end of the day.
mm,
And you know what I mean? So that's why I say I find them helpful. If you put an array of stuff, like I'll not set a program and just have one thing. You'll mix it up with yoga, you'll mix it up with, as you said, mindfulness, you'll mix it up with some podcasts and
mm.
so forth that people can listen to on
Yeah,
how to focus. Because it's not only about managing, but it's about focusing away from the office.
yeah,
You're used to your manager being on top of you, which is the other opposite of it. You're used to your manager being on top of you. All of a sudden, you're sitting at home and you don't know how to manage your time. And all of those things, that's what managing, come into well-being, because it is related to, be it your work relates to your mental health.
Yeah.
So from my take, yes, get those involved. And the other, which I found has been quite helpful, is, I mean, South Africa, there used to be ICAS. Here, I think it's Bupa that does it.
Yeah.
But you've got these services where if you maybe pay £10, whatever, per employee per month, right? They can call in if they're having childcare issues. They can call in and get support on that. If somebody's going through a divorce or going through something of that nature, they can call in and speak to somebody or get some assistance. If somebody is contemplating suicide or contemplating something of that nature, then this is a support place for them. Because I think and I'm going to ramble on just a little bit now.
No, that's fine.
In my role as an HR business partner, you talk to a lot of people, and that's how I've done mine. People do it very differently, but my way of doing it is I try and know as many people as possible and get to know you as much as possible, so I can, find ways to help you when you need it. Now, what we tended to find was that you find the guy you've been working with for last year, all of a sudden is just dead quiet, doesn't greet you, doesn't do, like, you're so wondering why.
Yeah.
But I'm not, and then you start talking to people and just reaching out to them, saying everything all right, everything good. But at the same time, I'll throw a disclaimer that I'm really not a psychologist and I'm really not a therapist. All right. What I do have is that people just talk. When you're in HR, people talk, and some people think that's all we do, and that's fair enough. If that's the benefit you get, then that's fine. So people will come and share, like, the problems that I've heard in life. So have made me think my life is a bliss. Like, I'll get home and guys will be like, "Are you not stressed with all the stories you hear?" And I'm like, actually, no, I'm not, because I look at it when I come back home and I think I prayed and I thank God. I don't have a wife who's dying of cancer and somehow I have to deliver to a manager who's not listening to me. And those are the things that people face. And now you're supposed to give that guy advice. So I wanted to do thorough disclaimers and say, look, I'm not therapist, I'm not this. I'm going to give you the numbers of the people to call. But if you want to just talk so that I can just listen, then I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And the guys will share, man, like some of the things that people go through, but they just don't know who and when to talk to. But so my role and thing I try and do is just to say, let's build confidence into everybody to say there's a support structure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then next thing you start seeing, because that person is shared, they go to the right channels, they start getting the right tools to assist them to manage the stress, to manage the pressure, or even how to have conversations with a line manager about the difficulties they're experiencing. So that's why I find that all of these programs and all sorts come into play, and we play a key role in ensuring that people know that these services and so forth are available. I mean, I'll be frank with you now and lie that sometimes I've lied to people that say, "Oh no, I called them last week and they helped me with 1, 2." Because I would not, of course, but it's just, to get, because I know you'll need that assistance.
Yeah.
But I think what you then get is a number of people who then come afterwards, and I'm just so grateful for that. They just took the time to just listen.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends now who think because I'm in HR now, I think I'm also their therapist. So it's that
just dumping everything.
But it's like it's just jumping onto it. You're just like, okay, I appreciate the fact that as friends you want to talk. Cool, let's talk part. My guy, understand. This is as much as I can help you with.
I think that's really important, because that's what I try and do. So we're on Facebook and Instagram, and what I always try and do is, whenever I can, I've probably not been doing it as much as I can, is supply those numbers for there's companies out there that we can mention. I mean, the one I know of straight away is like Samaritans, where you can call them for anything. In fact, I've used that service as part of my work when I've had an issue. And, and as you say, and rightfully so, is that, we're not professionals. We're not like we're not therapists. We're not psychologists and all that kind of stuff. I think what I hope to do when I started this platform was just to get like people talking. And I think sometimes it's just talking about your experiences and and using that as a way to try and help others. Like, I understand that my situation is probably far away from as bad as it might be for some people that are sort of that might be really in the doldrums. But, for me, it's like, when I look at it, like, like myself and yourself, we're in good marriages. We're in good partnerships where we can talk about things. We can talk about anything. So we've got those outlets. So maybe it's safe to say if we didn't have those outlets, it might have been much more difficult to talk about things, and especially in lockdown, we might have struggled more. And you
Yeah.
know, when I look at my neighbors, I've got a neighbor I can talk to about rugby. Every time I see him, we talk about the Six Nations. You know, we talk about Southern Hemisphere rugby. There's people I can have conversations about. I don't have to necessarily talk to them, and so if they ask me how are you doing today, I was like, how do you know I'm really down? But it's actually just having someone I can talk to, and it's not necessarily someone that necessarily knows how I might be feeling that day, but just having that conversation
Yeah.
with someone just lifts you up and just kind of it takes your mind into a different place, and then actually you realize, like sometimes I'll go out and I'm trying to throw out the rubbish. I forget I'm throwing out the rubbish because I started talking to my neighbor about rugby, and then I realized I'm start thinking to myself, I came out here for something, but I can't remember what it is. Sometimes it's those little things that once you start engaging with people, so whether it's picking up the phone and calling someone like from Samaritans or a child helpline, and whatever, and you feel like things, you feel like there's someone else to talk to. And I do realize that like there's some people out there that might not be able to do that for various reasons. um because maybe they're instead of, say for example, they're in an abusive relationship. I mean, I can't begin to
Yeah.
try and give advice on what to do,
Exactly.
or call this number, call that number, because it's hard. And I sincerely hope that there are this, sort of like maybe podcasts or other things out there that maybe that they can, reach out to and stuff. It's completely hard, but we can only talk about men's issues because we're experiencing men's issues. You and me are men, so sometimes it's simple things like that. And
Yeah.
from a work perspective, I'm privileged enough to have a manager who's really good in terms of thinking about well-being and mental health of staff and stuff. So yeah, so for me, I find it's just those small things,
Yeah.
and obviously having a partner that you can talk to is really good. But yeah, I mean, as I say, I try and share as much as I can on our platforms about people to call and stuff. And sometimes it might be a little bit difficult, but sometimes you people got to have that little bit of courage to pick up the phone, or open the
Yeah.
door and speak to your neighbor, because sometimes that might be the difference between being down and being up,
Yeah.
so,
100%.
so yeah.
Do you mind if we pause 1 second?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah,
mind if we pause 2 seconds? Two
yeah,
seconds.
yeah.
Let's pause. Oh wait.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's charging. That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I think you touched on a good point there though. Like we might not be able to talk from a point of view, and maybe we can. Some men do get abused in their relationships. Um, but I think you've opened up an interesting topic for me in the sense that men who abuse, we need to ask ourselves sometimes why and how we can help in that sense for them to get that under control.
yeah,
You and I might be fortunate enough that we can go through difficult times, but our wives are not there as our bags for abuse. Like my wife and I have never sworn at each other. When I told when I told someone that the other day, when he was asking me like what works in a relationship, I'm like, we've never sworn at each other.
yeah.
He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we've never sworn at each other. There's
Mm,
never been an FU in either one's direction.
yeah,
Like, but my guy, like, how do you manage? Like when you're mad and all sorts, I'm like, no, no, no. Madness, respect is key. That's the first thing. But respect is key. But when we get mad, I find a way to control my own anger, right? But
mm,
we've also set how we can communicate with each other. So if I'm mad, walk away, cool down, you come in to address the situation, all right? But at the same point, like I don't know what would need to happen for me to get that mad. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But I guess people have different relationships. We're both not aggressive individuals.
yeah,
So it's very rare for a scenario to get to a point where it's a shouting match and neighbors or whoever get involved.
yeah,
I mean, I've lived my previous life in South Africa when one of our apartments we stayed in. Goodness, I could hear every argument that went on upstairs,
mm,
every single one.
mm,
And it was the most disturbing thing we could ever come across because there was a shouting that happened between the
wow,
wife and the husband. But you know what that led to? The
mm,
kids. Oh goodness, you're waking up in the morning, but the kids also think everybody shouts, so let's also shout. So when they're talking to each other, it's just shouting match.
yeah,
But I think what's key is this: as men, and why we should talk is that we need to find the tools to cope.
Mm.
What's happening at this point in time, I think, and I can't speak with honest truth because I've never beaten a woman in my life or gotten to a point of getting close to that.
Mm.
I've been in fights with guys, so I think it's just you lose composure, edge. But
Yeah.
with age, we learned how to control that, so you don't get into fist fights no more. Too grown for that. So
Yeah.
someone comes and talks nonsense, it's, you're talking nonsense. Let me leave that alone.
Mm.
Now, a man needs to learn how to also do that. That's not your, not even that your child, you should do that, but that's not your property.
Mm.
You should never lay a hand on a person. And I think we as men need to start talking more about that and calling out people within our spaces
Yeah.
who are doing that. But at the same time, let's find a way to support, firstly, if
Yeah.
you can do.
Yeah.
So that's why I try and talk. I've not yet experienced a friend who does that kind of violence or anything towards their partner. And if I did, I think I would first clap them and then seek help for them.
Yeah.
But then I think it's important that any opportunities that we get, we try and help guys. Like guys, if you
Definitely.
know you're getting angry, if you know you can't control your temper, all right, honestly, go and seek help. And what a psychologist or therapist might help you is the tools. And I'll continue saying it. It's really just about the tools or the skill for you to manage yourself and your
Mm.
behavior.
Mm.
We go to a coach to learn how to play a sport. You go to a school to learn how to get educated, whatever. You go to a college to learn how to do a specific job, or
Mm.
at least the ability to do jobs. And I mean, it goes crazy after that. But why not go to somebody who knows how to handle such situations or teach you how
Yeah.
to handle those,
Yeah. And
so
I
you
think,
can find an alternative?
yeah, and I think for myself as well, when I look back, when me and my wife got, or before we got married, so obviously, well, we go to church, and I've always
Mm,
gone to church because we always felt that's important for us.
it's
And
very important.
you get the little bit of counseling before you get married, because some churches, that's kind of their prerequisite before they, you know, uh, you know, um,
Yeah.
agree to conduct your ceremony. And I've always felt like if you've got certain issues, sometimes issues can get exposed before you get married. So I remember one of the questions, um, sort of like the premarital counseling questions were, I can't remember the exact question, but it was a question around anger. Like, has any one of you ever shown signs or bursts of anger? And I remember this because we both looked at each other and were like, no. And and I think the reason why I say that is because, you know, again, with premarital counseling, and premarital counseling is not necessarily um, I wouldn't say it's you have to do it because it's going to mean that your marriage is successful. No,
No, no.
it's to try and bring out certain things that hopefully you won't take into marriage. So, and I think look at it now from what we discussed, that's quite important, because if you're like somebody who's got anger issues, in my opinion, probably shouldn't get married. That's just my opinion, because you know the issues that you're going to potentially have or vent out on somebody else, um, for that other person might not be worth it. But then also it gives an opportunity to look at addressing those anger management issues. So in the run up to the wedding, you think, okay, right, this is the level of anger that you have, but we need to address certain things, because certain things can be taken out from that counseling.
Yeah.
So for example, you've got anger issues. How do you currently deal with that anger issue? How do you currently deal with those anger issues? It might seem like a trivial thing, but it's like, oh, the person might say, the guy might answer and say, oh, a few walls, I've punched a wall. And that might make you think, well, wait, okay, right, okay. I'm not sure. Then and then it's then a question for the potential wife. Are you okay with this? Or maybe she doesn't even know. But anyway, I guess the point I was just trying to make is just like
Yeah.
sometimes it's important, because I would look at that as a serious red flag. I mean, I've got a daughter, and if I was to think like one day she gets married to a guy who's got anger issues, would that be okay with it? Probably not. So so those are the kind of things, again, are also important to talk about. But the other thing I also kind of wanted to mention was the rate of suicides.
Yeah.
I know, like in the UK, looking at the last figures I saw, I mean, generally male suicides tend to be higher than women. Um, and when I look at kind of sort of like men and mental health, I try to think to myself is like how. I mean, obviously, there's so many reasons why male suicides would be high, and I'm sure everybody would have their opinion. But to me, it's one of the things as well that I look at when I look at my platform or our platform as Men Don't Talk. Is just like hopefully more men can come out and start talking about it. And I think some men have been coming out and talking about it. I know a family friend who does a similar thing. Although it's not men centered, it's just about general mental health. So I only mention that because of what we're talking about in terms of hopefully trying to get more men to talk. And the other reason I pick up this point about male suicide being a little bit higher, obviously it's not to downplay women suicides as well, but it's I remember a friend of mine was telling me that a friend of his who lived in London, somewhere in East London. He was a very happy chap, always outgoing and stuff like that, but I think it was within somewhere between the first and the second lockdown. Never heard of him, and then never heard from him, and then all of a sudden, they just heard that the guy had committed suicide. And there was maybe people trying to come up with reasons as to why, but the guy lived alone. He was a person that strived on or lived off interaction, social interaction, and I think as soon as that got cut off, you know, potentially that could have been one of the things that that played a part in that suicide. And I feel like there's so many more stories like that we probably haven't heard. So again, it's kind of like when I look at Men Don't Talk, it's just like how can I help? And it's difficult because, like you said, we're not professionals, so we can't say, look, the key to this is X, Y, and Z. And I'm sure even the professionals themselves struggle with it. But again, it's just to kind of highlight that there's guys like us you can reach out to, and I'm my sincerest desire with my platform is that people will be able to just come on there and just share their stories and talk. And that's the reason why I did this. If it helps one person, absolutely great. But that's another thing to just kind of highlight, just how high male suicides are, and just the media, in my opinion, hasn't really talked much about I mean, they've talked about mental health and well-being and tried to make sure that they've given it as much cover as possible, much coverage as possible. But I feel like there's so much more that we're not hearing and that we're not seeing. And sometimes you wonder, it's just like, who's there helping all these guys,
100%.
So so that was just a bit more of, me from the heart. But just
but I think in line with what you're saying, is like, we say professionals, but sometimes somebody close to you does a similar job. So I think it was 2015, 2016. As I said to you earlier, my career was going nicely at the bank in South Africa at this time, and I applied for a work permit. All right, so to renew my work permit, and that thing was declined. Biggest surprise in my life. No one expected that. Company, nothing. It was just like, oh, why? And the government said, look, we want a South African in that position. We're tired of foreign. So that hit hard, man. And I had to appeal that process. And it took me about a year or so to do that appeal. And initially things were fine. I got a bit of cash. I'd saved some money. It got it paid out. So I was fine for a bit, and doing what I needed to, started small little things just to keep me busy. But what I didn't realize during that period was what that role or the job kind of meant to me as an individual, and what that does. And sometimes this is where not to say this what always happens with suicide, but this is where sometimes it happens, is that with men, we are so defined by either purpose or who we are or what we are. So you are no longer a bank manager, you're no longer whatever, you're just a guy. So you can't handle your financial issues, you can't handle. But anyway, what then happened was things went tight financially, and I was now under pressure. Now, as I think I'd mentioned earlier on, the people who then suffer around that are those close to you. So it went through months of me and my partner just having weird arguments, silly arguments. And I then sat with a friend of mine one day because I was just like, and this guy's name is Matt. He's just like the craziest friend I have. Like he's got the weirdest history that you could ever think of. But he's just like a crazy dude. And I'd known him for a few years through some other guys, and he was going through his own. But I just sat with him one day when I happened to be in Harare, and I'm like, listen, I'm going through this challenge, and I don't know what to deal, bro. I just think I'm not getting the support I need to. So I talked him through everything. And he said to me, no, I have an answer for you, but I need you to go and think about it also. Like, okay, cool. It's like, you need to check yourself. So I'm like, wait, what? Like, no, you need to check yourself. There's no problem with your partner. The problem is you. And you are putting the pressure. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about, guys? Like, you know how you always say to us, you'll never lie to us. And that's why we're always homies, because you tell us the truth. This is the truth. The truth is it's you. You're stressed because your things are not going how you want. And now you're putting it out there, and she's just trying to be supported. So go home, take some time, and just think through all of these things that you've talked to me about today. And just flip it around and then ask yourself, what part did you play? Take some accountability, take some responsibility for what you have done. And that was difficult to hear, because in my mind, I was right. You know, I'm not getting what I needed. I'm not getting the support I wanted. When I went and I sat and I had this conversation, and I thought to myself, through the next 2 days, it really brought to light that I needed to work on me internally and get myself right. But it was through this conversation with this guy. So that's why I say to people, why should you talk? Is because you'll get a reflection sometimes of something you never thought about. In my head, I was convinced it was not me. But when my friend could tell me and not be shy and say it's you, and you can be upset all you want, but it's you, and you need to go and think about it, and you need to get the support, that's when it changed. And from then on, to be honest with you, like I've had a very different perspective around that. So even when people come to me now and ask, like, you guys seem pretty cool, seem happy, like, no, you know, it's just a challenge. We went through some difficult times. But when I look at my wife now, I look at it very differently, because I realize that this was not an enemy of progress. This was my progress. I have gone higher and better because of the partner that I have, who I can now engage with. I've reached heights I never thought about just because of this individual. But the support I got from just talking to that friend, he wasn't a professional. And then started having proper conversations with my God as well, because that was what was slipping. And as you said earlier on, like your wife and you go to church and so forth, and that helped us. That relationship. But I also had to first get my relationship with God in order, my personal one, so that then the two of us then can come together as one. And that's that journey. So people will say, oh, it's nice and fun now. No, it was difficult. I think we got to points where we nearly said to each other, peace out. But it was because I was being difficult. But mentally, I was not cool, because what was wrong? Socially, I was fine, but financially, things were not 100%. My financial well-being, my physical well-being also wasn't 100%, because it just wasn't in the right space. Then my mental health was also out of gear. So my own old lady was like, hey, this guy's work. You know, because now spending time between home and thing, and they're like, hey, this guy's work, which said to my wife, like, how do you manage? And so that's when I realized that, like, okay, your friends say you are difficult. Yes, we're always difficult, but I think here you've taken it to the next level. So one of the first things I did was to go and apologize for what I'd done, and my behavior was just, and from there, it's happiness. Like I've got nothing in life to complain about on that side. But I think it's we internalize so much. And if you've lost a purpose, or if you've lost the reason for living, if you think you've lost it, this is why we sometimes have people going through and taking their lives. For all you know, if you just asked somebody, they could have given you that financial support you needed to hold you over. You might be getting kicked out of your apartment or whatever. And usually that's what it is with men, that we can't provide. And some will take the easier, no, let's take accountability. Let's take responsibility for ourselves and our actions. And I think that's when you kind of some abusers and so forth don't take the responsibility or the accountability about their own lives and their anger that they need to deal with. She made me do it. How?
Yeah.
It was you. It was you. Yeah, so it's a bit somber there, but you know what I mean? Like it's just life's experiences. And I'll encourage, as you've said, to guys like talk, reach out to people. Your friends are there to help. Sometimes we think they're not, but you haven't tried them.
Yeah.
Have you tried them?
Definitely.
Experience is key. But
yeah. No, thanks very much for that. I think that's probably a note that we can leave on in terms of, you know, trying. There's a lot of stuff that we internalize for certain reasons. So sometimes it's good to just kind of try and, you know, out-internalize them, if I can use that phrase. I'm coming up with my own new words now, but yeah, I think a lot of the frustrations are internal, and it's trying to figure out a way of bringing them out. But you know, more to come. I feel like we've exhausted the hour, but I feel like there's been some really good stuff. I think this is one of the few podcasts I've done that's kind of been really, really candid and like open, which is good. But so I just want to say to everybody watching, there's more to come. So, we just wanted to just kind of, start this conversation out with Jablani, and then kind of look at his background and where he's come from, and kind of obviously his work, because it speaks a lot in terms of like mental health. So thanks everybody for watching, and see you soon.